good politician.
I do have one question really quick on the war thing, starting with you. Who would you say are men, hold on, we'll do split. Are men or women the primary victims of war?
I feel like it depends on the angle you look at it, because certainly more men are in the battles, but when it comes to civilians who are, well, it's just different kinds of violence are faced by each group. It's not really that one is worse than the other. It's just very different.
I agree.
If you agree?
Because if you're talking about men going to war, they're going to be the primary victims. But you're talking about civilian casualties. Women are very likely, almost guaranteed to be raped if they're going to be killed by soldiers. Not American.
Yeah, don't use that.
Well, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think it's a guarantee that it happens.
Historically,
No.
yeah.
Well, it's not a.
It's not
One,
okay.
it's
that
terrible.
Was, yeah.
One, it's terrible. And two, yes, it absolutely happens.
Yeah.
Does it happen to every woman? No. And I think in more modern conflicts, it's far less likely, because at least amongst like more developed nations, there's protocols when it comes to like war crimes and shit.
war
like
crimes, the Geneva Convention.
Convention.
Yeah.
It still happens. It absolutely probably still happens, but okay, let's say, for example, like World War II. Let's look at World War II, right? World War II. If I concede that, say, there were 1 million essays during World War II, I don't know what the actual number is. Mm-hmm. Is that a bigger
than all the
grievance?
deaths.
Negative outcome.
I mean, I don't think you can really compare, I think it's just such like a terrible.
Well, no, let's actually play a game of comparison. So let's say that there were 20 million, let's say the male military deaths were exclusively male, and there were 20 million of them. But there were 1 million women who were essayed. Mm-hmm. Essay's a terrible thing. Which is worse?
Well, I feel like you could also argue that, like, having to live with that trauma after that happened to you, and then even potentially losing male members, like, of your family, or even maybe like your husband or something, like that position could be. That's true. Far
Women
worse.
having to like kind of pick up the scraps of just what the country's left to. Especially during World War II, when so many men died, and women had to join especially World War I, I would say.
Here, I'll just state the question again. And how about we'll do different conflicts. Yeah. Let's start with World War I, right? Mm-hmm. I believe there were 20 million military casualties. Maybe, I'm not precise in my numbers. Mm-hmm. World War II, there were more military casualties, more civilian casualties. Both wars absolutely catastrophic. Going around the table, were men or women the primary victims of World War I?
In World War I, maybe the men, because women's rights were actually advancing at the time.
I don't totally understand.
It was men.
Men.
I would say men.
Men.
Okay. How about World War II? So were men or women the primary victims of World War II?
Are we accounting?
Hold on, we're just starting here. And it could be some
like the Japanese camps. Like, I think that was also another
primary. So okay,
yeah, sorry.
Are men or women were men or women the primary victims of World War II? Go ahead.
I feel like that one might be more of an equal split.
Equal split?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay.
I'll say men, and I'll like elaborate on that a little bit. I mean, as far as like violence and stuff, it's got to be the men, and even how you just mentioned like Japanese camps and stuff. In the Philippines, my grandma grew up during World War II and stuff, and her father was literally beheaded. Like,
right.
It's just like that kind of stuff that happens.
Men.
Yeah, I'd still say men.
Men.
Because you're saying something about the camps in Japan or something.
That was me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I was just adding on that and honestly, more to men suffering just because they got captured or just, you know, the men that were in those camps. I think that was its own kind of torture too.
They were literally tortured.
Yeah, no,
Literally
yeah, no,
tortured.
100%. I'm just saying compared to SA.
I think
Yeah.
certainly bad things happened to
Yeah.
women civilians during war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
War
not
is
what I'm
terrible
arguing.
for everybody
Yeah,
involved.
100%.
Yeah, sorry. War is terrible for everybody involved, but like if you have to play the comparison game,
Yeah.
men are overwhelmingly the primary.
Way less survival rate.
Well, it's like they suffer the largest amount of consequences for war.
So what was the point of that question?
Well, I don't know. We were talking about we were talking about patriarchy.
what we said
We were talking about
yesterday's podcast.
patriarchy, and then the draft.
It's like
voting came
male
up.
privilege.
This misogynist said that she's against women
Voting,
voting. What a freaking radical over here. And then
I just wish it didn't happen.
you wish. Okay.
That I would need
I
to work,
think I think
just work at
voting-
home.
I think women should vote.
Would you feel differently if we were drafted in
Also,
war?
not trying to get canceled.
Or like if we were drafted?
Wait, but okay.
What do you mean?
Hold on. Let's do a few more conflicts here. Vietnam? Are men or women the primary victims of Vietnam, the Vietnam War?
I don't know that much about the Vietnam War. I
Okay.
do know a lot of civilians suffered during that as well. And I
Sure.
do know at that time the draft was only men. And a lot of men died, and a lot of people who come back from that war say that it felt like it was all for nothing.
That's true. That's true.
So it's maybe men.
Okay, let's do something more recent here. Last one.
Why am I the only one answering?
Okay, unless you guys want to do the Vietnam one, we can.
Men.
Man,
Men.
I just, yeah.
Okay, last one. The Ukraine War. Are men or women the primary victims of the Ukraine War?
That feels like it's a bit more equal because everyone's who is a civilian is being equally shot at.
Erroneous! Erroneous!
I
Wait,
mean, if
hold
you're talking
on.
about the people who are
Bro,
still
I'm not-
actively there,
You're not
But
Not prepared
hold
for
on.
this
Okay,
conversation.
but so let's just assume that you're right, that there's equality when it comes between there's an equal amount of civilian casualties between men and women in the Ukraine conflict. Let's assume that. I actually don't think that's the case. I would suspect that actually male civilians are much more likely to be dispatched as compared to the women. I already told you that the women were allowed to leave. If you were a woman, you could leave the country. All the men, civilian, military, you had to stay. A lot of male civilians in Ukraine have been drafted into the war. But if I give you that the civilian deaths are equal between men and women in the Ukraine conflict, but all the military deaths, or even let's say 95% of the military deaths are men, and 5% of the military deaths are women, is it still equal?
no.
Checkmate?
I mean, it's not really like.
'Cause you
people
said-
can
Oh.
change their mind. I'm not like.
Oh, okay.
It's not a matter of who gets like who's most right or whatever.
Well, because when I asked the question, you said it's
I
equal.
don't know that
in
much
Ukraine.
about these wars.
Oh,
It's hard to make these judgment calls with
Right.
very limited information.
sure. Okay. Interesting. Did you guys answer on the Ukraine one?
No.
No,
I'd say probably the men again.
Men, definitely.
sure, men.
Men.
Yeah. Now, do you doubt the claim that I made about women being allowed to leave the country?
I don't doubt it.
Okay. Yeah, they were able to leave the country. Men had to stay. Many of them got drafted into the military. So, for shizzle? For shizzle. Shizzle?
War always effing sucks, okay? Like, regardless, literally.
So should we draft women? I think that's what that stems from. I don't know. We're
Well-
talking about the patriarchy. Okay, last few questions on the patriarchy. Under the patriarchy, are women oppressed? Going around the table.
I think there are some things that aren't great. I don't really
Okay.
know if there's anything exactly under the law that
Oh,
oppresses
okay.
us.
Sure. Wait, last thing on the military thing, because I didn't really give an actual counterpoint. I'll just say this. For every single military conflict that there's ever been throughout all of human history, men have been and will be the primary victims of war in every instance. There's no military conflict that's ever occurred where women have ever been the primary victims of war.
It's unfortunate but true.
Wait, you'd prefer, you want?
No, I'm saying anyone dying.
Yes, war. Yes,
Yeah.
war's bad. Do you disagree?
I don't know enough about historical conflicts to say otherwise, but I'm not going to necessarily say
Wait,
I
hold
agree
on.
either.
But okay, earlier when we were talking about the patriarchy, and you were talking about, well, here's the evidence of the patriarchy, and the world is made for the benefit of men. I've provided you major military conflicts in the 20th century. Wait, let me just make sure. 20th century. Yeah, I almost fucked that up. World War I, World War II, the most brutal wars that ever existed, where tens of millions of men were killed, died. Bad things happened to women too, but not to the extent that men were negatively impacted. When we're talking about, and we're talking about patriarchy here, you mentioned something about, well, crash test dummies, gender, and medical
I
testing.
did mention earlier that
medical-
those were just surface level issues.
Right, but like I'm seeking like, okay, what would be like a significant grievance, right? And it's like, well, if the world is made for the benefit of men, is it though?
Well, patriarchy can also harm men. That patriarchy is part of why the draft is only men.
So you think if societies were, in terms of leadership positions, if they were occupied by women, there would be less warfare?
I don't know if that's exactly how that would happen. I feel like it depends on the individual themselves, not whether or not they're a boy or a girl.
Well, if I told you that there was a study of monarchs and they compared queens to kings, and they actually found that queens were more war hungry than kings were, and queens were much more likely to wage war than their male counterparts.
I think that could be more for the reason that women felt that they had to establish themselves and that they were already at
Well, hold on, the monarch?
monarchs. Yes.
You mean the
Yes.
the top authority?
Okay, yes. Listen. Because
They have to prove themselves?
yes, because
You mean the queen? No,
Because-
no queen or king has to prove themselves.
they do.
They have ultimate authority.
Off
They
with his
have-
head.
They have ultimate authority, but they have advisors and they have people that can rebel against them.
Who's the French king who said, "L'état, c'est moi"?
Probably one of the Louis.
Henry VIII.
I think it was
maybe?
one of the Louis. L'état, I am the state.
Oh, that's Louis the 16th.
The state is me.
Yeah.
L'état, c'est moi. Look, monarchs had substantial power.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say that usually monarchs were men.
Wait, so you're saying the queens wanted to like impress the lads?
No,
Impress
but I
the
think that
boys?
they had to be more
It's always for the
aggressive.
boys.
To be taken seriously, I think, by the
Yes.
general population, also like of their.
Yeah,
kingdom.
because yes, a monarch has all the power, but really,
They didn't need to be taken
Well,
seriously.
okay,
no,
so-
because
Not with
really
respect,
the,
maybe
people-
as a
I
monarch.
don't know.
they
the-
have to establish themselves so that there's not a rebellion.
In an age where the most important thing to every single person in the country was, am I going to be able to feed my family? They could care less. They could not care less what the position of the female monarch was.
Okay,
So,
so how about the advisors, the nobles that had all the money and influence? They would care.
Well,
They see a weak monarch, and they're gonna go somehow against that monarch. So
Same with neighboring kingdoms, they would see
Yeah,
a potentially weak
100%.
monarch
I think
and-
it's definitely more complex than you're
regardless of
making it
male or
seem.
female. It's generally the case that female leadership does not understand the innate drive for protection that men find natural. It's a natural feeling
well,
that
okay,
men have, and women just don't.
if women are so caring and maternal, how can they not understand the protection? If they have this innate drive to protect their kids, how can they not understand the protection of people?
Well,
You know,
it's the innate
different.
drive to nurture their children.
Yeah.
It's the father's innate drive to protect his family. Like if there is a armed shooter in your house, the man's the one who's going to go stop the conflict. He's the one who's like, I am obligated to protect my family.
But if the shooter were to turn to the kid, the mom would definitely step in front. I think it just happens
It's just
to be
not.
more
It's
what
not
the
her
woman
initial
thinks,
reaction. It's usually
because
flee.
she probably thinks, but it's because she thinks that she can't help as much. The man thinks that I'm the strongest one, so I'm obligated. I think that is what a man would think.
Well, when it comes to leadership positions, that's why women tend to be more aggressive. I can't say that's exactly why. I'm just theorizing right now.
I am too.
Yeah. So my theory is that women will tend to bash all other opposing forces because they feel a sense of like unable to protect themselves. So they are more likely to confront other people that are going to be against their position.
And so I guess my argument would be is they feel that they are unable to protect themselves because they feel that they have something to prove, and they feel like already at a disadvantage and like they're not being taken seriously.
Yeah.
Which I think especially maybe right now, a woman as president, would I think she would be as power hungry? And if she was, maybe that would disprove my theory. But I think right now there wouldn't be as much of a need. But in the time when women weren't allowed to vote, when they were not given,
What
like
time was that?
during when there was monarchs, I'm not talking about the current monarchs,
But
because
what if I told you during that period where there was monarchs in most of Europe, actually men didn't have the right to vote?
No one voted.
Either.
noblemen though, with their own property,
So, okay,
right?
They didn't vote.
So like
They-
0.001% of men
Yeah, but
had the right to vote.
okay, but
So
more than
99% of
women.
men.
Men were the property owners. Men were the ones that had, okay,
But that's not a gender thing. That's a power thing.
Yeah.
yeah, but okay. Well, you agree with me that men at that time had more power and more say than women, with owning property, with rights.
Yeah, they were
With their
they were
decisions.
the leaders.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah.
I don't
I agree to that.